Yeah, okay, we're going. So let me just give you a quick update where I am. Most of you know, some of you might not. I can't see everybody who's online, but we do have people watching on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube channel, and my Pacific Solo Shore team as well. So it was 3 years ago at my 64th birthday party that I announced my goal and dream to cross the North Pacific solo. I didn't even have a boat at that point, and but within 3 months, I did put an offer on a boat that was accepted, and I started to train and lived on the boat for a couple of years, commuting to the home in Nagoya, and then I decided, and I wanted to cross the Pacific before I was 70, but with the pandemic and not able to see my mother by airplane because things were difficult, I decided to make a go of it last year. And I left Tokyo Port March 4th last year to do a stress test to Okinawa and arrive back at Tokyo by April to see what else I needed to be done and then leave May or June. I think most of you know the story. The stress test worked because it told me there was too much stress on the boat and me, and I diverted to Mie, and I've been slowly cruising around Japan since, learning thin layer by thin layer and building my confidence thin layer by thin layer. I've done 38 ports, 41 days, calendar days at sea, just under 1,300 nautical miles. It's been a slow voyage, but a very interesting one. As I said, I've learned a lot. History Channel, we're going to do a 60-minute documentary about my crossing of the Pacific as a rookie sailor to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. When I changed my plans, they came back to me and said they'd like to do a series of me as a rookie sailor visiting Japanese ports. And so we tried to set up the pilot for Amami Oshima. Kirk Patterson, who's on my support team, became an advisor to the History Channel because he has circumnavigated Japan as well as doing the Pacific solo. And as I said, one of my advisors. But with Karuishi, the volcanic ash that had migrated south from the new islet off Chiba, 1,000 kilometers, it plugged up the harbors there and I couldn't go. So we diverted to Nagasaki Goto, where the History set up a week of filming on the island of Ojika. And then I arrived before them by 3 days. Well, actually arrived 5 days before, but 3 days before the shoot was to start, the mayor said, no way, because the Omicron numbers began to rise. So I then diverted to Iki, and I had to kind of leave the island where I was at because I needed to leave the boat for a bit, and I couldn't leave it there. Too much detail probably for you. But on the way to Ikijima, which is one of the 8 original islands in Japanese mythology, a wonderful island of history and culture. And it was Kirk Patterson recommended we went there. Halfway there, I had my incident at sea with the net being called in propeller. Had to get towed first by the Coast Guard, then by the Boat Assistance Network. Then we discovered the boat was leaking because it had done damage to the shaft when the net suddenly grabbed the propeller. And woke up a couple of days later to realize water was coming up above the floorboards. And so we got it plugged within minutes. We had engineers there, mechanics, the Coast Guard, Port Authority, etc. Arranged by Hayashida-san, who's kind of the harbor master for the yacht harbor. Again, another friend of Kirk Patterson, and also Linda, who's on my support team as well, knows him well. And then we decided we wrapped up the dripless seal, so it stopped leaking. But then we had to get it towed someplace to be lifted out of the water, and that ended up being Fukuoka City about 3 weeks later. The boat's now repaired. Wahine is in the Odo Marina. It was in Marinoa. Treated very well there by all the staff and the mechanics, etc., etc. But I decided to take the month of March off. It's been a year. I need to regather my own thoughts. I need to reflect on what I had done and what I had failed to do. And so I decided just to come home to Nagoya and also have some business to do in Tokyo with the Never Too Late Academy, which is a spin-off of Pacific Solo. And I'm so glad I have come home. So this is our home in Nagoya. It's a solar-powered log house. It's a real refuge. My wife's away at the moment. My dog is out on the porch. And Joshua has joined me for this morning.
In a beautiful house.
And this is my birthday. So that's kind of the update. We're now going to film the History Channel pilot in April. So in April, I'll be going back to Fukuoka and then sailing the boat across to Ikijima. And who knows after that? I'll continue cruising around Japan. One really attractive option is just to go north. The Japan Sea, spring, early summer is an ideal time to do that, I understand. And I'll be kind of following Kirk's favorite ports along the way, as well as others. But who knows? I've been telling people when they ask, where are you going next? I say, well, where the wind and the waves take me. One thing for sure, though, is I need to step it up. I need to have more sailing days. I need to have more adversity in terms of weather and sea state. I have other kinds of adversity, like legal, mechanical, etc. I've been scared often in the last year, but with every fright, I've become stronger. I was thinking about this yesterday of how, as a kid, I really viewed myself and was called by others as a scaredy cat. In some ways, I kind of feel like I'm becoming a lion, but I'm not. I'm still at cub level. So I'm getting stronger, more experienced, but I need to step things up considerably. So now kind of aiming spring 23, but we'll need to shoot a History Channel series before that as well. So that's kind of the update. If you have a question, you can send it through Facebook Messenger. But a lot of people sent their questions in beforehand. Joshua is going to moderate that. Joshua is helping me with the Never Too Late Academy. He's one of a team of people. It's more than just me. It's kind of centered on me at the beginning because there's a lot of people like me starting off on a big, new, audacious and high-stakes dream or goal. But we have other people we're talking about offering courses as well. So Joshua is from the film industry. He's now in Nagoya. So tell us just a bit about yourself and then over to the questions.
Yeah. Briefly, I've been in Japan now for just a year. I came from TV and television production in Chicago and Los Angeles. And that actually came after about 10 years in a sales career, which I was very successful at. So, roughly 7 years ago, I made a big leap into a new venture. And then being in Japan now for just a year, I met Lowell 60 days ago.
November?
It was very recent, but my interaction with you was inspiring and continues to be inspiring, through your journey on the sea, all the trials and the fears that you're talking about being on water. I have on land. But your perseverance has sort of helped me believe that I can push through all of that stuff. So I'm honored to become a friend and colleague and be here with you on your birthday, and look forward to achieving my own dreams. And yes, it is never too late. It is never too early. The only thing I think that stands in most people's way is themselves. And you do a great job at helping us get out of our own way. So thank you and happy birthday. And thank you all for watching.
Great. Well, over to you with the questions.
Sure.
And then at the end, we'll do the draw.
Yep.
And every one of these questions will receive a $10 gift voucher or a copy of my book. But I think a lot of these copies are out there already with a lot of you, so you may choose the voucher.
There's great stuff on that Pacific Solo website also. I spent $60 or $100 a couple days ago.
Oh,
so
thank you.
You'll see the order coming in
thank
soon.
You. Every bit helps keep me afloat.
All right. So the first question we got was from Tyler Walkie. the question, and I hope I say everybody's name right. Which part of your journey has been the toughest for you? And getting started, getting funded, or the actual sailing?
Wow, everything. I mean, this has not been easy. I think the easiest thing is having people get what I'm trying to do. So I was surprised when I first kind of concocted the plan, and I probably should say that I've always dreamed of living on a boat and of sailing and of crossing an ocean. That was the dream. And when I moved, and I did some dinghy sailing in my early years, and I courted my wife. We went off on a friend's 26-foot sloop off the west coast of Canada, and sailed the Greek islands for a week one summer when we lived in England. When I moved to Japan 25 years ago, I gave it all up. The dream, that is, because I thought it's too expensive and my language abilities kind of sucks. So, but then I discovered the Tokyo Sail and Power Squadron, which helped me get my boat operator's license in English, and also met up some Japanese sailing community as well. And I discovered, hey, this isn't as expensive or opaque as I thought. And it was then that, as I got back into sailing, began to crew on some other boats, it was then that this specific idea of Pacific Solo came. As it often comes, I thought, okay, I can do this. I'm going to get a boat. I can get a boat. I can sail. I could cross an ocean. In fact, I'm going to do it by myself. It was that kind of, and with some dreams and ideas when they come, sometimes they're robust. You know immediately that it's going to happen. And as you blurt it out, everybody around you knows, yeah, that person will do that. Other ideas or visions or dreams are much more fragile, and they take a time to nurture, etc. And that was the case with Pacific Solo, because I asked myself, really? Is that what you really want to do? And when I became convinced that I answered some deeply personal questions of myself, which I won't bore you with the details of, and then I began to just share it with family first, and then close friends. And so going back to the point, that was kind of easy, because they all thought, yeah. I mean, some were concerned. Probably the one who got the most upset with me is my daughter-in-law, Maria. And often since, she says, Dad, you're making us worry too much. But then I kind of hatched the plan. What I would do, YouTube channel. I'm not a moneyed person. We've done okay and have this house, which I still owe money on, but we've lived comfortably. But I've been in the non-profit sector, so I didn't have a mountain of cash. So I had to figure out a way to fund all of this. And I used all the cash I had, but I had to go out and raise money from others as well. So that was a big challenge. And there have been moments where I have thought this is the end of the road because the money's running out. And as my friend Mike Alfont says, it's sometimes when our back is against the wall in terms of a startup, he's an entrepreneur, that's when we do our best work. And that's often when the creativity comes. So the funding is always a challenge, and there's been acute moments of fear, but we're getting there. And the Never Too Late Academy is partly an answer to that as well. So funding has been an issue, Tyler. Getting started has been an issue. Learning to sail, I know some of my sailing buddies who are watching, they'll quite rightly disagree with me about this, but actual sailing is where I have the least worries. Now, I found out in my stress test that I had to fix the reefing. That I didn't have a third reef in the mainsail, and I've had to learn my boat and the winches and fine tuning that. And by no means could I race my boat. I'd lose. So I need to step up my sailing and get more experience in adverse conditions. But but it's more the mechanical side. I'm never mechanically inclined. My friend Tony from the shore team is a mechanical genius on all things mechanical. So he's helped me somewhat. And with every repair, I learn something. But probably the greatest moments of fear have been at sea.
Sure.
And it was the crossing from off Izuhanto to Mie-Ken, where I changed plans not to go to Okinawa. And then the real fright was in January, where I caught the net and the propeller, etc. And then you have to overcome that fear.
Yeah.
And, my philosophy is fear's not a wall, it's a doorway. It's not an enemy, it's a companion. Sometimes I say friend, but that's probably overstating it.
Yeah.
You have to work out your relationship with it. But it stops you in your tracks sometimes, and you go into a cold sweat. So there's been scary moments. And then I've had to learn YouTube and video editing. And thank you for coming and handling all the techniques.
Scary
technical
in its own
stuff
right.
today.
I have a question quickly about the fear. So all of these things are going to be challenging going into it, and the dream is a big one. And I think, and this question might come up later, but a lot of people, when they go off on these big adventures, or want to, they are struck by that fear. Oh, there's too much. How do you, or what is it about you that, do you just forget it? Do you push it out of your mind? What is it that says, no, I can do this? Maybe I've never done it before, but I can do it.
Well, sometimes you have no choice but to do it,
Yeah.
right? So something's happening. But I guess it's in my nature to bounce back fairly quickly, and I can cite, I can think of many situations in my life, professionally and personally, where darkness is overcome and you have to fight. And probably I'm kind of mildly depressive at times. That's self-analysis. I was on a podcast recently with Jennifer Shinkai on Ikigai, which is a Japanese word, a concept for what gets you out of bed in the morning. And I declared to her for the first time, and so I'm saying it now too, that when I started school, I was diagnosed with a speech impediment. In reflection, I believe I was mildly autistic. I didn't speak till I was 3 years old. I was socially awkward. I wasn't coordinated, at least in upper body. So I had all the symptoms, and it made me quiet, and it made me a bit awkward. But I see that now as a gift, because I think that instilled with me a tenacity to observe and listen to others. And I always joke Pacific Solo isn't solo at all. Because I got all of you watching, and I got my short team and those who are on the short team who helped me a lot. And I learned early that you have to always learn and observe. And even on the short team, there's differences of opinion at times as to what I should do, even technically. And I value every one of those voices. But ultimately, I have to come and make that decision myself to move forward. So I think that the childhood, I was the awkward middle child. My older sister, who's watching probably, I was the problem child. My brother Brent, we called him Baby Brent, couldn't do anything wrong. Still irritated by that.
You had a lot to prove. I've always said you can never learn too much. So even, learning from everybody will give you something new.
And Tyler, I congratulate you. You just bought a boat. Well done.
Yes.
You just got to bring it to Japan now.
We'll welcome you. We'll move on to the next one. Julia says, "Hi Lowell, I just completed my first 3 overnight passage. It was an amazing experience, but whenever I fixated too much on trying to do right, or when things got overwhelming, I'd become stiff and blocked mentally and physically. What's the most important thing in order to become a freer beginner?" It's almost kind of piggybacks off of the last question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can only speak from my own experience. And I get blocked at times. As I said, the darkness comes. This is where distraction is helpful. And on land, that distraction for me is getting on a bicycle or going for a run. There's something about the release of endorphins that brings creativity to the fore for me. That's when an insight can come. As I'm ruminating about the problems, I go for the run, and I used to be a long-distance cyclist, and it's almost like at moments there's epiphany. There's a lightness of spirit, and you see something from a different perspective. So that'd be my argument. But my advice is distract yourself, ideally with something physical. If not physical, then something cerebral. A lot of my bicycle friends, they're adrenaline junkies. They love going down mountains at breakneck speeds.
Yeah.
I'm an endorphin junkie.
Yeah.
I like going up. I like the challenge of the cadence. I think this is also part of the answer is, life needs a cadence. It needs a rhythm. But occasionally, and your heart rate is up as you're just going through life. And as my doctor said, if you're sweating, you're winning. So keep body temperature up, keep your heart rate up as you're moving forward. And it's like riding a bicycle cadence. It's like turning the handle on a jack-in-the-box. And occasionally, the jack springs out of the box. And you have that moment of drama and inspiration, and it changes you.
Yeah, I get that. Actually, I see someone, one of your club members, potentially on a motorcycle or moped. For me, that's my getaway too, because there's so much. Your focus is everywhere. It's on the vehicles around you. It's on staying upright. It's on really staying alive, but also enjoying everything around you. There's no time to focus on those things that are holding you back or getting you down. And I think it's, really, you get a lot of clarity out of that. But if you're on a boat, what do? You got limited space.
And I don't have enough experience yet. I've done 4 overnight passages.
Okay.
2 of them alone. 1 virtually alone, because the young man who came with me to help me do 60 miles up the west coast of Shikoku got seasick within 30 minutes. And then I had another problem on my hand. And cardio is a problem on the boat. So I don't know yet. So my answers are still as a landlubber, and that's where I need to step it up. I need more experience.
It's something that's going to come up later. All right. A question now from Chris is the concept of, and this is a good one. The concept of never too late is beautiful as it empowers people to live out dreams, no matter how long they've held on to them, or how recent they are and how big the dreams are. But have you ever encountered someone who took this a different way? As in, well, since it's never too late, I can wait till my kids finish college, or I can, wait till I have a bigger savings. And then I'd say, what do you say to those people? How do you get over that?
Well, first of all, let me say that I may have to write a new book one day that David Lahiste, one of my shore team and helped me with the electrics on the boat, he's already given me a title for a book I may have to write. It was too late. And it is possible.
Sure.
So the term never too late, it's an old adage. It's rhetoric. But it also, with every old adage, there's truth. And so I think a companion adage to never too late is another well-worn phrase. But if you take it at its deepest value, it's true. And it has power. Where there's a will, there's a way. So again, my dream was to get a boat, live on a boat, and sail across an ocean. That became crystallized in a goal to cross the North Pacific solo. I'm 100% intent on doing it. I'm not 100% confident I'll succeed.
Yeah, sure.
And I had one friend, Andrew Silverman, say to me when I first shared with him this idea, he asked me, do you have a death wish? And then he said, months later, Lowell, just go out for 4 days, then come back and say I tried. But it's true, Chris. I get it completely that that it can be too late, but you also need to take into account responsibilities in life.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have done this 30 years ago and put a young family at risk. But now the fear of not doing it is greater than the fear of doing it. And I'd also say, I also agree that it's never too early.
Yeah.
But it can
Maybe
be too
it is.
early.
Yeah.
It can be too early as well. So,
how about, do you think then, you have these big long-term goals? Is there a way to start on them early? Maybe, you have a dream, a big dream of crossing the Pacific. Is part of it just breaking those down into smaller goals, perhaps? And what can you do right now, given your life's scenario or situation?
And in my case, I fell in love with sailing in my teens, dinghies first, etc. And then even in Japan and Yamakuko, I sailed lasers for a few summers as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have a dream, you should always harbor it, and whatever is within your parameters of possibility, as a parent, as a husband, as a wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, employee, whatever.
Yeah.
But also, try. I've given advice to my own sons. Ryan has always aspired to be in business since he was a youngster, and we learned how to. I taught him how to count pennies, and Mackenzie has always aspired to be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And we saw storytelling,
Yeah.
and I've always encouraged them, don't deviate from the path.
Yeah.
Whatever your dream, the ideal is to turn your dream into commercial viability.
Yeah.
So even with this dream now, do I make it a hobby or do I make it a business? And the only way I can make it sustainable is a business.
It's a business.
So early on, if you got dreams, you have to, in the words of my friend Mike Alfont, who's a fellow Never Too Later, he's involved in the academy as well, and he's on he's featured a new course that's coming out shortly of when you use your own money, how do you mitigate risk? And he talked about you need to be cautious, you need to fulfill all obligations of the family, but then he said, but you also need courage.
Yeah.
Allow your back to go against the wall.
Yeah.
And so you got to take risks.
Yeah.
And the old adage is true: nothing ventured, nothing gained.
It's interesting though to say that you can balance all of those things. I think too often we're told high risk, high reward, and we're not told you also have to balance your responsibilities, the things that matter. Your family, your whatever is happening now. It's a lot of people just say no, go all in. But I think this is far more practical advice.
So let me say that there's a lot of people who are dreamers.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the exact quote and who said it. There's a lot of people who dream, but not everybody gets out of bed and puts their feet on the floor.
Yeah.
And takes the steps to realize the dream.
That's it, right? The first step. You've got to wake up to realize your dreams. Next question is one I'm very interested in. How are you going to be able to stay on your boat by yourself for a year?
Well, first of all, it won't be for a year, hopefully. Hopefully I can do the crossing within 2 months. I'll provision for longer.
Yeah.
And, there's other solo sailors here.
Yeah.
Kirk may be online, who's done the Solo Pacific via Hawaii. There's Gene, I think he's watching, who was my good Samaritan in Nagasaki.
Yeah.
And he was to cross the Pacific more or less the same route as me, but dropped to San Diego this year. But I don't want to divulge why he's not doing it this year. That's his business. But he plans on going next year. But he builds reed boats, and he's crossed two oceans on reed boats.
That's insane.
So hopefully it won't be a year. But to me, that was always the biggest challenge, being alone for 2 or 3 months. So far, I'm living on my boat alone. I come home here every 6 weeks for a few days and do errands and help with the house, etc. But I'm coming into harbor most nights.
Yeah.
And I've been in 38 ports and have so many wonderful stories and encounters and people who've just appeared out of nowhere to help me etc. So I don't know yet.
Yeah,
what it's like.
I'm gonna say
I don't know yet.
2 months in the middle of the ocean is a little bit different than being portside, but it's gonna be tough.
But I think the issue of being a solo, for me, is it's not retreating from relationships.
Yeah.
It's going into solitude for a purpose to reconnect with yourself and then reconnect with those around you.
Yeah, there's a greater purpose for it. It's like riding a motorcycle. You're by yourself to regain yourself. Another one I'm curious about, do you have plans to pass the Japanese radio operating license in the future? And my follow-up to that is, I'm unaware of what that means, and other people might be unaware of what that means. Is there a benefit to doing that? And what are the challenges that are seen in doing that makes this curious?
I'll give the specific answer first and then the background explaining the question. The answer is no.
No.
I have no plans. Simply because it's in Japanese
Yeah.
and I can't do Japanese. There is the possibility, and I learned this at the recent TSPS annual meeting, that they may honor my Canadian VHF license. But let me explain what the issue here is. If you have a Japanese vessel in Japan, you are bound by certain regulations and need different levels of certification by a government authority called JCI. And when I bought my boat, for example, I thought I could just sail off to the sunset. And I found that I couldn't. It was only allowed 5 nautical miles offshore, approximately about 9 kilometers. And so then I found out to upgrade it to Enkai, which allowed me 20, or Kinkai, which allowed me kind of within some regions of the Pacific Ocean. You had to get all this extra equipment. And one of the pieces of equipment is a VHF radio. And to have a VHF radio in Japan, you need both a station license and an operator's license. Again, sorry to be mentioning Kirk so much, but he's an example of someone who came to Japan with a foreign registered vessel, and he didn't have to comply with anything in this regard. I've got a Japanese vessel, and so I have these extra regulations. So I'm hoping that they will honor my Canadian license. I took the exam for that last year, and I have it. But it's the VHF radio license.
I see. Yeah. There's quite a bit of those licenses that exist in Japan, and as foreigners, we often don't know about them, and so they kind of always appear, and we just have to find ways.
And with modern VHF radios, there's now what they call the MSI number, which is kind of like your telephone number.
I see.
And on the new VHF radios, there's a disaster button that you just press it, and immediately your number is sent out. I can't get an MMSI number without having a station's license.
I'd want the disaster button.
Now, the fact is, I hope the Coast Guard isn't listening, and JCI, I have a VHF radio.
Okay.
I have it on, and if I needed to press that button, I would, or if I had to call Mayday, 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 I would, because safety always comes first.
Yes. And we'll cut that part out for the Coast Guard that's listening afterwards.
I think they know more about me now than I know
myself.
Having been stopped or inspected 9 times.
All right. This is one of the last questions we have from our viewers that we're gonna share today. But I think this is a good one, and we've touched on it a bit before. But what is fear for you? You've said you're a type of person that, sort of just pushes past these things. So, I'd say beyond what is fear for you, what is the biggest fear you have in this journey, but also in maybe life in general, to get philosophical?
Wow, well, the second question is very philosophical. Gene Ishikawa, please everybody take note of his name and Google him. He's an amazing character, my Good Samaritan in Nagasaki. I met him on Dejima Wharf. And my 2 sons were with me at that time, and he's got an amazing story. He's built over 300 reed boats, and he's crossed the Atlantic and Pacific. Now he's got plans to build a big one in California and sail it to Hawaii.
So cool.
And but before that, he's going to sail solo across the Pacific. So check him out, Jin. That's Jin Ishikawa.
And I think, sorry to interrupt, I think he also sent us a link to his social media profile, so we can share.
We'll put it in the description.
Yep.
So I think I've already said my belief is friend isn't an enemy; it's a companion. It's not a wall. It's a doorway. It's like the first time I went rappelling, or in England they call it abseiling, where you walk backwards over the cliff, over a cliff, and you've received training. There's safety harnesses and everything, but the first time you do it, and you're standing there with your heels over the edge, there's nothing more unnatural than to step backwards over a cliff. But once I did it, the thrill.
Sure.
So I think whatever the fear is that I have to master, overcome, or work out my relationship with, I know there's a reward on the other side. And that's what takes me forward. Sometimes it seems like it's a fear that this is impossible.
Yeah.
And there are many things about the boat and about sailing and about weather forecasting, etc., that are still beyond me. And as I said in my video in January, when the Coast Guard rescued me, I did everything I was supposed to do within the realm of my knowledge at that point. But my knowledge wasn't enough. So that scares me, but that forces me to keep going forward. I think the philosophical question, it's the same with everybody else. You want your life to matter. And I want to leave a legacy. And I was coming back from Cambodia a few years ago. I was just turned 60. I had a donor to visit some of the families we provided clean water for. That's been my life, helping the neglected poor become self-reliant through Hope International Development Agency. It's still deep in my heart, and I've seen the effects that clean water brings to people. And so I took my friend Ray Klein over. He's been a great supporter. He was a board member for a time. On the way back, he was in business class. He tried to upgrade me, and then it turned out to cost too much money. So I said, I'm fine back in the back seat. But because I was hearing so many people say, who's going to succeed you? When are you going to retire?
Yeah.
And then having just been with families in Cambodia, and believing firmly that all of us are unique, therefore none of us is dispensable. We can transfer skills. Job descriptions can overlap, but no one can be Joshua. No one can be Lowell. And I thought there's things that only I can do because of my life experience, network of relationships, etc., etc. So I just decided I'm never going to retire. I may come off a payroll. That's different. But I'm not going to retire. And then I thought the person that became the focus of that was my grandson Eli. Because I thought to myself, I want to leave things in this world that my grandson can point to, whatever archive books or YouTube channels are in 50 years from now. I want him to be able to say, my grandpa did that. So I come back and I tell my family, one by one, said, just want you to know, I'm not going to retire. I don't know how that's going to work out, but I'm not going to retire. I want the planet to be better. I want people to be better. I want to make a difference. And the last set of family I talked to was my son Ryan, his beautiful wife Maria, and Eli, who was then only about 2 years old. We're sitting in an outdoor restaurant in Tokyo, first floor where my son worked at that time. And I'm telling them all what I just told you. And then Eli's beside me playing with some toys. And then I say to them, and you know what? I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for him. And at that point, he dropped his toy, put his toy down, put his arms around my neck, said, thank you, Grandpa.
Oh, man.
And it doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but for me, it sealed the fact I want to be courageous for my grandson. I want to do things that not only make him proud, but in whatever small footprint I leave, I've left a good footprint. That's why I'm not going to retire, and I want to go bigger and bigger. I would also say, when I finished my bike ride up Japan 21 years ago, and I wrote a book, I had a contract with a British publisher called Chasing the Cherry Blossom. It's still available on Amazon, I think. Kyushu, as I cycled through, that chapter is all about Christianity. To my surprise, there were churches everywhere. So I wrote, because it was called A Spiritual Journey Through Japan. Then I got to Shikoku, it was all about Buddhism. Because you just see all the pilgrims going the opposite way I was going on the 88 temple. Then I get to Honshu, and the first place I'll land up is PL Kyodan, famous baseball team, but it's a new religion. So that became a topic in Honshu. By the time I got to Hokkaido, it was all about me. And as I'm riding down the forest to catch the ferry back to Nagoya, I'm reflecting on, what does this mean? And the question I asked, is this it? And then there was like a gentle whisper that came, came from on high, came from within. I don't know, but the whisper was clear. It says, your greatest days are yet to come. Everything you've experienced so far has been preparatory to more in the future. And that shaped me. And that bike ride scared me. Because before I did that bike ride, I didn't know how to change a tire in a bicycle. And I fretted about that. So that's it.
It's truly inspiring to me. My journey started with the passing of my grandpa, who 8 years ago now, who was my inspiration, but he was a lot like you. He didn't retire. He continued to find new ways to challenge himself, create things, literally leaving physical, tangible legacy behind, whether it was a glass art project or music. And that inspired me to change my path. Then I had children. And so my children then became my why. And it's, everybody says it, but I think if you don't have children or you don't want them, it's okay. But as soon as you have them, it changes your life entirely. And finding purpose beyond you maybe sounds cliche, maybe sounds corny, but I think it is really the biggest driving force. And it helps you push through all those fears. So I got a little emotional hearing you speak. So thank you for that.
It's raising important. Kids, I'm immensely proud of both my sons.
Yeah, you've got great kids.
And the ladies they married, and my grandson has been formed. Eli's already into NFTs.
Wow. Thanks, Grandpa.
Okay, so I don't know what time it is, but we said we go about 45 minutes. We're at the end.
There. We're there.
We got $100. So everybody who's at, is that the last question?
This was the last one. So we have. Yep.
So
we have up
$10 gift certificates to all of those. But can you hold this up?
I can.
We've got a Wheel of Fortune.
So there we go. I don't know if you can see the names, but you'll be able to see the names when the winner is. So Well,
just before you do that, let me just say, Never Too Late Academy. A question I'm asked a lot is, how do I pay for this? And as I said, I've sunk in my own money, but we've got some free courses and some paid for courses coming out this month, which basically I'm sharing the steps that I did, and a particular interest in the sailing community is sponsorship. And my mate David, a new mate David, a fellow YouTube channel guy who's grown his channel much faster than I have. He calls me, and I'm embarrassed by it because I'm in Japan, the sponsorship ninja. So I want to share with others, how do you get sponsors in a sustainable way? So if you're interested in checking out good content from me and others, just go over to the Never Too Late Academy.com.
We'll link that too, and just adding on to that, as someone involved with the Never Too Late Academy, I am relatively young and by no means have immense wealth. I came from very little, but with Lowell's advice and the guidance of the Academy, I've found ways to take those steps to get to where I want to get. So it's very valuable stuff.
Right.
So thank you, Lowell. Here we go. We'll choose
Can
the
you
winner.
get closer? Okay.
And who does it land on? Tyler. There's some fanfare, some sparkle.
Hey,
Yeah.
you get some Pacific Solo swag for your new boat.
There's great hats. There's great hoodies. There's great, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So we'll message you afterwards.
And this man, he may kill me afterwards for saying it, but he's a giant in the esports world. And
I am. I'm a fan. And
no, but he's in that world and is a producer as well as a background in network television and films, etc.
Yeah.
So
truly a passion, and thanks to Lowell, I now feel like I can, continue to pursue all that stuff. And my special happy birthday, Lowell!
Oh,
happy birthday, sir! I hope you enjoy the rest of
and just
the day.
thank you to everybody. Say it again, Pacific Solo isn't solo at all.
Yeah.
You give me energy. The YouTube channel is just a small channel, but the quality of subscribers are just... even when some of you come and complain about something I've done or give me advice or send me an angry private message, truly, I always value it. And I know my last YouTube live, there's one particular chap who kind of got after me a little bit, and he got after me even more offline, and I just engaged him because I have things to learn from people more advanced than me. So it sounds cliche. I love you all.
Continue watching. Like and subscribe everywhere. Keep following Lowell and the journey and the Never Too Late Academy and Pacific Solo. And Lowell, I look forward to seeing you achieve that. And thank you guys for joining us.
Have a good weekend.